The hush of evening lay over the Rhoyne, its sluggish, wine-dark waters gilded by the last wisp of sunset. A cadence of cicadas and river frogs underscored the dusty heat, but two travelers paid the nocturnal symphony no heed. They pushed their skiff through a tangle of reeds, boots squeaking, blades drawn. Not for show, but because all Essos whispered of ghosts on this bend. The taller man wore a ragged hood the color of fog. His gait betrayed a swordsman's poise, yet every footfall seemed measured, as if the earth itself might notice him and cry out. The second, slighter figure moved like a shadow tethered to the first, eyes flicking from moonlit water to dank riverbank. They were hunting, though both knew the prey better than the prey could ever know them. At a shallow inlet they halted. The hooded stranger passed his companion, a splinterwood lantern, and motioned for silence. Torch flies drifted around them like ember spirits. Without a word, the second man drew a slim dagger, slipped into the underbrush, and vanished. The hooded traveler waited, counting heartbeats. 5, 10, 12, each thrum echoing through ribs that had once been shattered beneath a prince's plate and ruby armor. Only the river replied, lapping against the hull in languid kisses. Then came the whistle, two rising, one falling. Clear. The hooded man took a slow breath. He waded ashore, boots squelching in silt, eyes fixed on a half-collapsed fisher's hut up the bank. Its thatch roof sagged, yet a lamp flickered within, and something metallic glimmered in the doorway. Armor polished, but of no king he recognized. A single step more and the hood fell away. Silver-gold hair spilled across narrow shoulders. Moonlight kissed the aquiline face that songs once praised as fairer than summer dawn. It was a face thought lost beneath the waters of the Trident, a face burned from banners and scratched from Septon's ledgers. Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, firstborn of the Mad King, rightful heir to the Iron Throne. Yet heir no longer, not to the maesters who penned Robert's grand histories. To the world he had drowned beneath the hammer of the usurper while rubies danced in the shallows. Only a sworn few knew how the river had carried him, barely breathing, to a mud-caked bank where hedge knights found what they believed a corpse. Only Rhaegar's own stubborn pulse and a healer's art kept his flame alive long enough to disappear beyond the grasp of Westerosi rumor. 17 years had passed since that broken day. 17 years of exile, of careful masks and secret names. Daron Waters, the minstrel knight, the bleeding star. But exile was a cloak ill-suited to a dragon, and Rhaegar had long since wearied of disguise. In his dreams, those haunting dragon dreams whose scales were thunder, he saw Westeros in chains of bronze, every song silenced beneath the roar of lions. He saw his wife and his children lying in crimson pools, and in their dead eyes he found himself to blame. The Golden Company had given him purpose anew. Bittersteel's exiled heirs might once have fought for Blackfyres. Yet the sons of Demon were dust, and gold sells legend to whomever pays. Rhaegar offered more than coin. He offered a cause worthy of their storied vow. Beneath the gold, the bitter steel, he promised a song restored, a realm unbroken, and a king of dragon blood to sit the Iron Throne. Still, not even the Golden Company would march for ghost tales. Before elephants thundered across the narrow sea, before tattered banners bearing three-headed red dragons unfurled in the wind, Rhaegar needed assurance, proof that Westeros could crack. That proof waited inside the crumbling hut. He crossed the clearing, each bootstep steady but coiled. The hut door groaned wide. Within, a single oil lantern sputtered above a crooked table where maps of the Stormlands sprawled like flayed hides. Bent over them, armored in dun plate streaked with summer dust, knelt a grizzled captain, hair receding, eyes sharp as falcon steel. Miles Sour Corbray, late of the Vale, now captain of a motley corsair band that raided Reach wine barges. Corbray's head snapped up. "You're late, Silver Bird," he rasped, hand dropping to the dagger on his belt. He squinted as recognition dawned. "That hood hides little you're. Careful with titles, Sir Miles," Rhaegar murmured, voice soft as dusk bells. "Walls listen, even rotten ones." Corbray snorted. "Rotten is half this continent." He jabbed a mailed finger at the Stormlands map. "Had word from Griffin's Roost. Cunnington's men count barley, not blades. You'll find no spear wall there, only empty coffers and burning pocks. Rhaegar's lips pressed thin. Jon was ever proud. Even ruin cannot slake it. Yet I must speak with him. To beg him to raise your ragged banner? Corbray leaned back. Or to confess you're the ghost who's haunted his cups these long years? I will confess nothing, Rhaegar said, and though his tone remained even, shadows danced like wildfire in violet eyes. I will show him. Dragonstone's seaward towers still stand, and the memory of dragons still haunts men's hearts. Robert's reach grows fat. Fatness breeds complacency. The day is ripe. Ripe or rot? Corbray chuckled, running a tongue across cracked lips. Robert's hammer broke your breast. Time made it stronger. Steel may bend beneath a hammer, Rhaegar answered, but a hammer cracks when striking stone. The tent flap rustled. The slider companion slipped inside. His cloak's clasp bore a golden skull, wings unfurled. Garland of the Golden Company, once squire to Bittersteel's last scion. He nodded. No watchers in sight. The river folk huddle in their dung nests. Corbray scoffed. Might be. But in old Volantis they whisper dragons have 3 heads. I wonder which head you mean to wear. Targaryen. A hush settled, thick as storm clouds. Rhaegar lifted a gauntlet hand, and in the lantern's glow his signet ring glimmered. A crowned dragon clutching a harp. One head died at Summerhall, he said, fingers tightening. Another drowned in the Trident, or so they think. Dragons can't swim, Corbray sneered. Nor hammers fly, Rhaegar countered. But prophecy is a riddler's game. Aegon's dream spoke of ice and fire, of princes promised, not of which heads must survive. So you make yourself the promised one? Corbray's laugh was low, nearly pitying. You're a man, not a dawn-bright tale. I am both, Rhaegar whispered, though his gaze drifted past Corbray, seeing not the crooked table but a throne forged of blades and screams. I have lived in songs since before my naming day. Songs kill more kings than blades, Ser Miles, for songs outlive them. A chair scraped. Garland spread a curling parchment across the maps. A roster of pledges, gold sigils beside each. 5,000 spears, he recited, finger-tapping. 400 archers, 80 horse, light and swift. 3 galleys under Captain Strickland's hand. And, most prized, 2 war elephants. Corbray spat on the floorboards. Elephants won't fit down the King's Road. I care not for roads, Rhaegar said. Elephants trample roads. Silence lingered. The lantern sputtered again, a small gasp before death, but it found new oil and blazed brighter, casting giant shadows across the hut's warped walls, hulking shapes like half-remembered war beasts from Valyrian mosaic. Rhaegar nodded once, decision hardened like dragon steel. Send word. The Golden Company embarks within the moon's turn. We sail for Cape Wrath. From there, Dorne will open its gates or burn. Corbray raised an eyebrow. Your mother's kin may welcome you, but Doran Martell plays at snakes and sand. Doran grieves, Rhaegar murmured, grief flickering in his own eyes. Elia was his sister, but grief is a forge. It shapes the will. He will aid me if only to avenge hers. And if he won't? Rhaegar's answer was soft, yet iron-barbed. Then Dorne will learn that dragons breathe fire still. Far across the summer sea, in a stone-and-glass pavilion overlooking the Red Mountains, Prince Doran Martell watched twilight seep over Sunspear. A breeze carried desert musk and the faint salt of the narrow sea. He traced a fingertip along a parchment letter, sealed in black wax unbroken. The cipher of the Golden Company. He had read the words 10 times, but each reading felt a dagger twist. Your sister's son yet lives, so to her husband, he will cross in force. Meet him at Ghost Hill should peace beckon or war. Doran closed his eyes. He remembered Elia's gentle laugh, soft as Martell bells. He remembered her children clinging to her skirts, chasing water gardens. He remembered, too, the quiet horror on Oberyn's face when the Red Viper returned from King's Landing with tales of ash-smeared walls and cinders where Rhoynar blood had burned. A cough shook him, and pain flared in swollen joints. He whispered, "Could the river spare a dragon?" In the shadows, Ariohoda dipped his poleaxe. "Lies travel swifter than caravels, my prince." "Lies have teeth," Doran replied, "but hope has wings." He let the letter fall atop another, and another. Missives from spies in King's Landing, whispers of Robert's feast hall gluttony, of Stark Lannister friction, of a realm adrift. Rhaegar's death had been the keystone of Robert's reign. If that stone were proven hollow, the arch might crumble. "Summon Maester Caliot," Doran ordered. "And my daughter. We must speak of marriage and dragons." In King's Landing, the Iron Throne brooded like a mountain of blades beneath a million candles. King Robert Baratheon lounged upon its slashed seat, fat belly-straining velvet doublet, one hand wrapped round a silver goblet, the other idly stroking the arm of his crimson-haired queen. Yet as Pycelle droned on about harvest shortfalls, Robert's thoughts drifted not to grain but to ghosts. A silver-haired prince singing beneath a weirwood. Every moon's turn, Robert's dreams returned him to the trident, to that single ringing blow. He remembered the hot spray of blood, the crunch of armor, the red gems skittering like dying embers. The realm hailed him hero, breaker of dragons. Yet in sleep, the prince's eyes opened and asked one question. Why? Robert drained the goblet and slammed it upon a marble step, startling Pycelle into silence. Enough! He lurched upright. Summon the hand. But Eddard Stark was far in the north, weeks away, guarding a wall of ice while letters piled upon the small council's table. Renly cleared his throat. "The hand hunts boars, your grace, not quills." Robert scowled, mind flitting to Ned's solemn eyes. "Send a raven. He'll want to know of these empty granaries." He paused, tongue heavy. "Send another to Storm's End. Ask Stannis about his blasted ships. We may need them sooner than he would like." Cersei's green gaze narrowed. "Warships? Against whom?" "Husband." Her voice dripped honey, but beneath it lurked a viper's coil. Robert's answer came unbidden, almost frantic. "Against any bastard fool enough to test me." But as the words left him, a servant scurried forth bearing a tattered black pennon, the sigil of the Night's Watch, Crow on Milky Field. The boy knelt, trembling. "My lord, a ship from Eastwatch brought this. Wildlings stir. The wall begs succor." Robert cursed. Even shadows beyond the world's edge clamor for gold. He waved the boy away, though his heart pounded. If the north burned, Ned would tarry. Robert would be left with Tywin's lion's smile and Varys's silken plots. Wine soured in his gut. Once, Robert had thirsted for nothing but battle song, but now the realm sang of debts and droughts. Better men wielded ledgers. Robert knew only the hammer. In the gallery above, Lord Varys watched through painted lashes. The spider's whispers named storms gathering. Sell sails massing in lists, Dornish merchant princes buying elephants, and rumors, wild, ridiculous rumors, of a silver prince walking the docks of Volantis, harp slung across his back, voice like summer rain. The spider smiled. Rumors were threads. Threads wove webs. And Varys had learned, long ago, that in webs even dragons might tangle. South of Volantis, where the rotting ruins of Summerhall slumbered beneath moss, a bard perched on smoldered stone. He plucked a high harp, its notes drifting like dawn mist. A lone shepherd paused, spellbound, as the song spoke of tragic kings, of wildfire births and dreams betrayed. The bard's hood hid his face, but the shepherd glimpsed a glint of amethyst beneath the cowl and crossed himself with shaking hand. Some tales the small folk dare not speak, yet songs travel on the wind, and every song begins with a single secret chord. That night fires burned in camp after camp along the Blackwater Rush. Sellswords sharpening pikes, exiles whispering of gold coins stamped with three-headed dragons, and merchants counting wagers on who would sit the throne come year's end. In the Golden Company's command tent, Harry Strickland unfurled a sea chart. 20 galleys sail at dawn, elephants in the holds, knights on deck. Our prince will board at Volantharis. A grizzled veteran spat. Prince, he says. Prince o' corpses, more like. Strickland's gaze hardened. We sell our swords, but not our vow. Honor, brothers. Beneath the gold, the bitter steel. Iron rang as every captain drew a dagger and nicked a finger, blood beating in lantern light. One by one, they pressed crimson smears to the dragon-head seal on the map, binding oaths in salt, steel, and sanguine coin. Across the sea, in Storm's End, Stannis Baratheon studied tide tables as gales howled. He plotted patrol arcs for his war fleet, grim certainty carving deeper lines about his mouth. Something stirred beyond the horizon, and Stannis, ever alert to storms, felt the barometric weight of prophecy, though he disdained Maester lore. Lord Seaworth, he addressed Davos, candle flame dancing. Fetch Salador San. I mean to double the blockades on Shipbreaker Bay. Davos hesitated. Sala will demand gold, my lord. Then pay it, Stannis growled. Or pay in blood later. Davos bowed, though he wondered what foe could vex the Lord of Dragonstone more than Stannis's own longing for a crown denied. Whatever it was, it rode the wind from Essos, and it smelled of smoke and distant mourning. On the Maiden's Day of the 9th moon, gulls circled a black-hulled galley as it slid into the fog-wrapped cliffs of Cape Wrath. Rhaegar stood at the prow, hair whipped silver, dragonbone harp strapped across his back. Behind him, rows of spears bristled like autumn grain. Elephants trumpeted in the hold, uneasy at the unfamiliar salt air. Garland handed him a cloak of crimson silk, clasped at the throat by a ruby no smith alive could price. For the small folk, he offered, let them see the dragon rise anew. But Rhaegar shook his head. Let them see a man first. The dragon comes later. As the gangplank thudded upon wet sand, rain began. A warm, southern rain, as if Dorne welcomed him with tears. Rhaegar stepped ashore. Pebbles shifted beneath his boots, but he felt only the pulse of home soil. He knelt, scooped a handful of damp sand, and let it trickle through gloved fingers. Too long, he breathed. Too long away. Trumpets blared. Golden Company sergeants formed ranks, banners snapping. A golden skull, an iron dragon, a red sun pierced by a spear. Rhaegar rose. A hush rippled over the host. He drew his sword, a slender, Valyrian blade gifted by Ares on the day Viserys was born. The rain hissed along its edge, and steam curled like ghosts. My brothers, he called, voice carrying across surf and spear point. My sisters, my Sellsword kin, hear me. For 17 years I have wandered, half a man, haunted by a realm I failed. No longer. Today the dragon returns, not for vengeance alone, but for justice. For the children stolen, for the songs silenced, for the crown meant to guard the realm, not bleed it. Ride with me, and Westeros shall hear our thunder. A roar erupted, steel upon shields, elephant cries, mercenary voices merging into one word, dragon. Rhaegar lifted blade skyward. Lightning flashed, and for a heartbeat the sword burned black-red, a blazing omen against a storm-brazed sky. Far off, unseen, the first raven took wing from Storm's End, wings beating desperate time. The message it bore would reach King's Landing in 2 days. Invaders at Cape Wrath. Banners unknown. Elephants sighted. Robert Baratheon would laugh at first. Then he would remember rubies, floating, and the laugh would die. Night settled thick over the camp. Torches flickered like will-o'-wisps, and the air smelled of roasted goat and wet canvas. Rhaegar sat alone before a brazier, harp in his lap. He plucked a minor chord, low and mournful. Its tremor rolled through the silk of the tent like distant thunder. He sang softly, a lullaby his mother once hummed when storms raged over Dragonstone's towers. Lyrics spoke of moons turning red, of stars weeping silver fire, of a lonely dragon seeking sunrise. His voice, mellowed by years, held a brittle beauty that made even hardened mercenaries pause beyond the flap and bow their heads. When the last note faded, Quiet laughter sounded. From behind a canvas partition stepped a youth of 15, garbed in gray squire's cloth, dark hair spilling over earnest eyes. He knelt. "My prince, your music shames bards." Rhaegar touched the boy's cheek. "My son, your words shame kings." Young Aegon, 17 years dead in Westerosi tale, had been smuggled from the Red Keep hours before the sack, traded for the child of a potboy who died in his stead. Illyrio Mopatis's machinations and Varys' silk snare had spirited the babe across the sea. Now, grown tall and wiry, he bore faint freckles of his mother and the calm, studious air of his uncle Doran. "Are we truly home?" Aegon whispered. "Home is more than soil," Rhaegar said. "It is what we build upon it." Aegon's eyes hardened, yet glistened. "Then build something that cannot burn." Rhaegar smiled, though sorrow tugged at its edges. "Help me, and it will stand eternal." Outside, Garland's voice barked orders. Scouts to ride at dawn, ravens to soar to Griffin's Roost, to Sunspear, to Dragonstone. Rhaegar strummed one final chord, hopeful, rising. He whispered to the strings, "For Lyanna, for Elia, for what should have been." Flames danced. Somewhere beyond the camp, thunder rumbled. And so began the slow march of exiles and elephants, of rumors and songs, toward a realm where old ghosts waited. A tired king haunted by guilt, a lioness queen sharpening lies, a patient prince in a water garden, and a maester north of the wall who read omens in the pale, cold sky. Dragons, once thought slain, moved again. First in whispers, then in hoofbeats, then in fire. The song was not yet sung. It merely took breath, and breath, given time, becomes storm. When dawn bled across the cape, pink as a babe's cheek, Rhaegar stood atop a seaside bluff. He watched waves batter basalt pillars, felt the wind lash his cloak, and tasted salt like tears. Behind him, elephants lumbered in single file, trunks swaying, eyes small and wary. Men cursed, coaxed, laughed. Birds wheeled and screeched overhead. A lone rider galloped up the cliff path, dust plume trailing. It was Garland, helm removed, curls plastered by sweat. He reined in, boots sliding in shale, and saluted. "The Dornish come," he reported. 10 banners, orange suns and spears. Prince Oberyn Martell leads them. Rhaegar's pulse quickened. Oberyn, Elaya's brother, the Red Viper, whose rage was legend, whose spear had tasted Galbart Glover's blood on pike. If Oberyn stood ready to parley, Doran's blessing lay behind it. "Prepare the honor guard," Rhaegar ordered. "No arms raised beyond respectful salute. Let the Viper see I come in peace, even if my tail spines gleam." Garland nodded and wheeled his destrier. The hoofbeats faded as Rhaegar turned back to the horizon, where sun and sea kissed. He closed his eyes. Through the roar of surf he almost heard Lyanna's laugh, chased by Elaya's lullaby. Perhaps they watched from some gentle realm, willing him to mend what his choices wrecked. He bowed his head. "Seven guide me," he breathed, though once he had doubted the gods. "Let my song not end in ash." Below, in the Golden Company's ranks, men murmured of portents. Some spoke of dragons waking on Dragonstone. Others swore ravens flew in circles above the Red Keep, screaming in tongues no maester knew. A washerwoman claimed she saw a direwolf howling on the wall, eyes burning blue. The world was changing. The very air felt brittle, charged. Yet at that cliff's edge, Prince Rhaegar allowed himself one sliver of fragile hope. The realm he loved stood upon a blade's edge, but blades could be reforged. He had seen steel reborn in Dragonfire once before. With steady breath, he descended toward fate. The song of ice and fire was not over. Its opening movement had merely been a prelude. Now, at last, the symphony began. And somewhere in the stony vaults of the Red Keep, beneath cobwebs and sleeping dust, the skull of Balerion, the Black Dread, seemed almost to smile. The rain had slackened into a thin, silvery drizzle when Prince Rhaegar descended the bluff toward the makeshift parley field. Salt haze curled between the dunes, softening pennons into watercolor smudges of orange and red. Before him stretched a shallow swale of coarse grass and blown sand, ringed by two hosts that studied one another with wary fascination. On one side, the burnished helms and black and gold gorgets of the Golden Company. On the other, the lean spearmen of Dorne, their copper scales winking under the cloud-bruised sky. Rhaegar had chosen his retinue with care. Garland in his lacquered skull helm, a pair of veteran sergeants whose scarred faces bespoke every border war from the disputed lands to the Greenblood, and young Aegon, whose mail hauberk still smelled of forged soot. The boy rode at his father's left, stiff-backed, sapphire eyes flicking from elephant to scorpion cart to the dun-clad Dornish ranks. He had never seen a war host before. Across the trampled grass waited Prince Oberyn Martell, clad not in the lacquered scarlet of tourney days but in a supple jack of boiled leather studded with dull iron. A spear as slender as a dancer's wrist rested against his shoulder, its ash haft bound in snakeskin. He was flanked by his own small honor guard, a half-dozen Sunspear captains, a bannerman of House Manwoody, and Ariohota looming a head taller, poleaxe humming with quiet menace. Between the lines, a lone banner pole had been rammed into the earth. From it drooped two flags, the golden skull of Bittersteel beneath the three-headed dragon of Old Valyria. When Rhaegar and Oberyn drew abreast of the pole, they dismounted in unison, each handing reins to a squire. Sand squelched beneath their boots as they faced one another within arm's reach. Close enough for Oberyn to smell the faint cedar oil on Rhaegar's gloves, close enough for Rhaegar to note the thin white scar that now curved along Oberyn's cheek like a crescent moon. For a measureless moment no words came. Wind rattled spearheads, and gulls wheeled overhead, squawking like harpies. Then Oberyn inclined his head, almost lazily. "Ghosts walk early this year," he said, voice smooth as Dornish silk. "First my brother sends word of a silver wraith singing in Volantis, and now the wraith stands breathing before me. If you are a dream, Prince, you are a vivid one." Rhaegar did not smile. "I bleed as any man. Will you test the dream with iron?" Oberyn's lips curved, though whether in mirth or warning was unclear. "I have spilled blood enough to know its taste, but your song reaches my ears after long silence. What tune do you play for Dorne?" Rhaegar drew a steady breath. "I come not as petitioner, but as kinsman. Elia was my wife. Her memory is the cinder upon which I sharpen each step toward justice. And the babe she bore you?" The viper's eyes gleamed. "King's Landing names him dashed against a wall, yet whispers claim another tale. Whispers speak truth." Rhaegar turned, beckoned. Aegon strode forward, cloak flaring. Rain purled upon his dark hair. In his face Oberyn read something of Ashera Dane's dusk-bright grace, something of Elia's gentle bones, and the raw, untempered edge of dragon blood. "My son," Rhaegar said simply. "A prince, but more. A living promise that Elia's line endures. I bring him home." Oberyn's breath hitched. He circled the youth like a cat, spear but tapping wet ground. Aegon did not flinch, though his pulse thrummed so loudly he thought the Dornish spearmen might hear it. When Oberyn halted, he pressed two fingers to the boy's cheek, then to his own scar. "Dorne remembers," he murmured, voice roughened by something close to grief. He stepped back, lifted his spear, and planted its bronze head into the sod alongside the banner pole. "I cannot speak for my brother, but as Elia's kin, I welcome you. Yet know this, justice for Sunspear means more than a crown reclaimed. It means the skulls of those who butchered children." Rhaegar's gaze flared. "My path leads past those skulls. Ride with me, and you may choose the spear points." Oberyn laughed, bright and shocking in the damp hush. He extended an open hand. Rhaegar clasped it, gauntlet rasping leather. Thunder grumbled low over the stepstones. Beneath that sky the pact was sealed. By nightfall the Dornish encampment had merged with the Golden Company's lines in a sprawl of tents and cookfires that glowed like embers strewn across the cape. Rhaegar's command pavilion, a modest affair of striped red canvas, sat at the confluence of two dirt lanes patrolled by silent Giscari infantry. Within its oiled walls hung a single tapestry, 3 dragons circling a blazing comet. A battle council convened around a cedarwood map table. Present were Harry Strickland, Oberyn, Garland, the Myrish quartermaster Bessak, and Sir Miles Corbray, whose cynical sneer never quite left his weather-cracked lips. Aegon stood behind his father's shoulder, cloaked but attentive. Strickland planted ivory markers along the Stormland coast. These are the garrisons Robert keeps, mostly stormborn lords sworn to Stannis. Griffin's Roost lies here. He prodded the table. Cunnington's levy is meager, but he commands 2 castles still loyal. And Tarth? Oberyn asked, tracing a fingertip along the chain of islands. Selwyn the Evenstar honored Rhaegar at Tourney, if memory holds. He honors debts, Rhaegar affirmed. We send ravens at once. Corbray barked a laugh. Ravens may prove slower than Robert's ravings once he learns the Trident's ghost marches with elephants. The usurper will muster every stag and boar from Cape Wrath to the Lannister marches. Let him, Oberyn said, twirling a dagger. Fat men fight poorly in summer heat. We shall bleed them before they see the reach. But we do not seek a war of attrition, Garland interjected, voice edged with the discipline of Sell's word arithmetic. Our coffers stretch, yet not without limit. We require a single, decisive blow, one that strikes at Robert's legitimacy. All eyes turned to Rhaegar. He placed a hand upon the battered riverstone that served as Dragonstone's marker. My brother Viserys is but an echo of what might have been. My sister Daenerys lives across the world, unready. Only I possess the claim strong enough to unseat Robert. Yet a dragon alone will not suffice. We must show the realm its rightful prince was wronged, and that wrong can yet be set right. He looked to Bessak. How quickly can we move the elephants north? Through Dorne swift, the merman replied. But Storm's End walls are thick. Elephants balk at siege. I do not mean to besiege Storm's End. Rhaegar's gaze sharpened. Robert will assume we creep along the Boneway. Instead, we ride straight for King's Landing by sea and sand. A 2-pronged thrust. Dornish spears cross the Prince's Pass to threaten Highgarden, forcing the Tyrells to hedge their roses. Meanwhile, our fleet strikes Blackwater Bay before the Red Keep can breathe. If the city opens its gates, the war ends in days, not moons. Corbray tapped his dagger against a marker shaped as a warhammer. What of the hammer's owner? Robert will charge like a bull. Then we lure him to ground of our choosing, Oberyn said, eyes bright. A viper favors rocky soil. But his lions, Garland warned. Tywin Lannister sits at Casterly Rock. He may march. We must pray his gold holds him, Strickland muttered, or else the realm will drown in blood. Rhaegar's jaw set. We do not pray, we plan. He placed new markers. 1 golden sun for Oberyn's spears, 1 winged skull for Strickland's Sellswords, 1 3-headed dragon for his own household knights. The pieces formed a crescent that kissed the Blackwater's mouth. Tomorrow, he pronounced, envoys ride for Sunspear and Griffin's Roost. Our fleet will resupply at the Children's Tower, then sail for Blackwater Bay beneath the next moon. The council dispersed into the damp night, each man bearing silent calculations of risk and glory. Only Oberyn lingered, studying the prince beneath lantern glow. You gamble with loaded dice, cousin, he said quietly. Victory will crown you savior, or carve you monster. Rhaegar's violet eyes reflected twin flames. There are worse monsters upon the throne already. Oberyn reached into his sash, produced a small, cloth-bound bundle, and pressed it to Rhaegar's hands. Inside is a ruby I pried from the Trident years ago. I kept it as a reminder that even jewels may bleed. Wear it when you face Robert, and let him recall whose blood stains his dreams. Rhaegar unwrapped the ruby. It caught lantern light, glinting like a captive sunset. He closed his fingers around it. Thank you, Oberyn. Thank me when the lion's cubs lie caged and Elia's name is sung without tears. The viper departed, spear whistling softly through the tent flap. Rhaegar stood alone, the ruby heavy in his palm. Outside, the rain ceased, leaving only the hush of sleeping camps and the distant boom of sea upon cliff. At dawn, Coral pink light spilled across the cape. Aegon roused to trumpets summoning quartermasters and horse masters. He shrugged into boiled leather brigandine, belted sword, and hurried toward the mustering field where elephants were kneeling to receive wicker howdahs. The beast's eyes, framed by painted sigils, seemed almost mournful. "Majestic, aren't they?" A woman's voice spoke beside him. He turned to find Nymeria Sand, second eldest of Oberyn's daughters, leaning upon a spear taller than she was. Her braid was a glossy black whip down her spine. Her leather jerkin bore a yellow silk sash. "They are enormous," Aegon managed, cheeks coloring. She smiled sidelong. "Bigger than Robert's belly, they say." He laughed, surprised at the ease of it. Nymeria studied him. "Is it true you never swung a sword in earnest?" "I've trained 6 years," he defended. "Training cuts dull against live steel." She motioned to the practice yard where Dornish spearmen drilled. "Come. Suns rise slow in Dorne. We have hours." Aegon hesitated, glancing toward his father's pavilion, but Nymeria strode off, and curiosity drew him after. They found a half-empty ring, kicked clear of dew-soaked sand. Nymeria selected 2 wooden sparring swords and tossed one. Aegon caught it, surprised by its weight. "Remember to breathe," she counseled. He raised guard. Nymeria lunged. Their blades clacked, shoulders jarred, feet skidded. Twice she swiped his ankles. Twice he toppled. On the 3rd bout he feinted left, rolled, and tapped her flank. She barked laughter. "Better!" She tapped his chest. "But leave no space here. Your enemy feeds on distance." They sparred until their arms trembled and sweat plastered tunics to skin. At last Nymeria lowered her blade, panting. "You learn swiftly, Prince." He grinned through bruised lips. "You teach swiftly." A sudden hush fell. They turned. Rhaegar stood at the ring's edge, cloak billowing like storm cloud. Amusement glinted in his eye. "Enjoying the dawn, son?" Aegon flushed. "Yes, father." Nymeria was. "A gracious instructor, I see." Rhaegar faced her. "My thanks, lady." She bowed, spear but striking sand, and departed, casting Aegon a final, knowing smile. Rhaegar watched her go. "You've made a friend of Oberyn's daughter. Guard that." Aegon nodded, wiping sweat. "I will, father." Rhaegar's gaze softened. "Come. We must pen letters. A prince rules by ink long before steel." They walked toward the pavilion, sea wind teasing damp hair. Behind, the first supply wagons rattled south, beginning the long serpent of March. Far away in King's Landing, rooks fluttered atop Maegor's holdfast as ravens arrived in haggard bursts, black wings weary from storm crossing. Grand Maester Pycelle wheezed up marble steps to the council chamber where smoke hazed the chandeliers and Queen Cersei lounged in high-backed chair, pale fingers drumming the lion-head armrest. Varys drifted at her shoulder like a benevolent shadow, while Lord Renly arranged daggers of sunlight across gold-broidered sleeves. Pycelle cleared his throat, scrolls shaking. "Your Grace, 3 ravens bear ill news. The first from Storm's End. Lord Stannis reports an unflagged fleet rounding Cape Wrath. Yellow hulls and war elephants sighted aplenty. He suspects pirates." Renly snorted. "Pirates with elephants?" Our dear brother's sense of humor dims. "The second raven comes from Griffin's Roost." Pycelle unrolled the parchment, adjusting lenses. "Lord Connington writes of a silver-haired man calling himself Ser Daeron Waters, traveling with 6 companions, requesting parley." Cersei's eyes narrowed. "A Sellsword name. One used by Rhaegar in exile lore." Varys murmured, lips barely moving. Cersei perched forward. "The dead princeling risen?" "Poppycock." Pycelle swallowed. "And the 3rd raven, your grace, from Dorne." Prince Doran reports strangers mustering at Ghost Hill, and warns of, he peered, voice thinning, dragon banners. Silence caved the chamber. Then Cersei rose, skirts whispering. "Summon the king." Renly rolled his eyes. "Robert Hunt's boar beyond Hayford. He'll be days." "Ride," Cersei hissed. "Drag him home." Renly flicked a glance at Varys, whose benign smile bespoke entire webs shifting. In the Kingswood, Robert Baratheon bore blood from his hammer's pommel while lords cheered. His breath misted. Summer's end crept near. He drank sour red from a horn, yet the taste soured further when Ser Rhaegar Royce spurred up the muddy path, visage strained. "Ravens from court, your grace." "Urgent." Robert grunted, broke the seals, and scanned the parchments. First came Stannis' terse script, elephants, unflagged fleet. Robert grinned. Stannis fears his own shadow. The grin faded as the Dorne letter unfurled. Talk of dragons breathing, golden company landing. Robert's knuckles whitened. Rubies flashed behind his eyes. Rubies swirling in the trident's eddies like dying stars. He turned to his huntsman. "Break camp. We ride." "But the trophy," a lord protested. Robert hurled the horn into ferns. "Trophies mean naught if ghosts claim my crown." As camp flurried, Robert paced alone, hammer dangling. Clouds massed like iron anvils overhead. For the first time in 17 years, the king felt a chill deeper than autumn. South of Griffin's Roost, a narrow track wound through olive groves toward a watchtower half-ruined by old storm. John Connington waited beneath its crumbling arch, cloak snapping in stiff sea breeze. His auburn beard was now salted white, yet the shoulders beneath tarnished breastplate were still squared by soldier's pride. Hoofbeats approached. Rhaegar, clad in plain steel and gray cloak, with garland and corbray trailing. Connington's heart hammered. Memories of Summerhall, of laughter by candlelight, of vows sworn over new-forged blades. He stepped forward, intending a crisp salute, but his voice cracked. "Rhaegar." The prince dismounted slowly, eyes shining with unshed tides. "John." They embraced, gauntlet to steel, and for an instant the years fell away. Connington pulled back. "I searched half the free cities for word of you. They told me you drowned. A part of me did." Rhaegar touched his chest. "But dragons do not drown. And now you seek fire." Connington gestured toward the unseen fleet. "Robert will gut you if he can. Will you aid him?" A bitter laugh. "I swore oath to your blood before I ever knew Robert. My sword is yours. Then serve not me alone, but my son." Rhaegar beckoned. Aegon rode up, helm under arm. Connington's breath caught at the sight. Elaya's eyes in a face stern as dragonstone. He knelt. "My prince, forgive my failing. I was not there." Aegon dismounted, placed a hand on the kneeling man's shoulder. "You are here now. Rise, Lord Connington." Tears ridge-lined Connington's gaze. Rhaegar clasped his old friend's wrist. "We march on King's Landing. Griffin's Roost will guard our rear. Ready your garrison to shadow our flank." Connington straightened. "It will be done." Then, quieter, "Does the realm know you live?" "They will, soon enough." Along the Prince's Pass, Oberyn's outriders harried a column of Stormlanders under Lord Errol. Dornish bowmen loosed from ravines, arrows hissing like sand vipers' teeth. 80 stags fell before Errol sounded retreat. The chessboard began to tilt. Each skirmish whispered of a dragon's return. In high Sunspear towers, Doran met with Arianne. She read his secret letters, eyes widening. "When?" she asked. "At once. You'll ride to Highgarden. Offer betrothal. My daughter to Mace's heir, in exchange for Rose neutrality." Arianne bit her lip. "And if Tyrell spurns?" "Then the reach bleeds between lion and dragon. We sell them choice." She folded the letter to Rhaegar. "He was your friend. Friend and dagger." Doran winced as gout flared in his ankle. "If his hand shakes, the dagger will cut us all." The Golden Company's fleet made Children's Tower by new moon. Galleys re-rigged sails of dark crimson. War elephants were ferried to low-draft barges. Crossbow decks bristled. Captain Strickland oversaw drill after drill, grapnel teams, firepot crews, shield roof exercises under arrow sleet. Rhaegar walked the docks at dusk, harp slung across back. He paused to reassure sailors, to bless the brow of a boy no older than his daughter Rhaenys would have been. Each gesture drew murmurs. "The prince is kind. The prince is flesh, not specter. Through such murmurs, legends grow. That night, he withdrew to his cabin and unwrapped the ruby from Oberyn. He fitted it into the pommel of his Valyrian blade, where once lay a plainer garnet. The gem glowed as lamplight kissed facets, as if embers clung within. He recalled Lyanna's laugh drifting across Winter Grove, Elia's soft hand upon harp strings, Arthur Dane's solemn nod the morning he left for the Trident. So many ghosts, yet ghosts had guided him here. He sat at writing desk, summoned parchment, and penned a letter to Lyanna's son, Jon Snow, worded in care, sealed for dispatch by swift gull northward. Whether Jon would believe Rhaegar could not know. But if prophecy named a prince who was promised, the boy born of ice and fire must someday stand beside Dragon, not against. Quill scratches faded into hush. Waves lapped hulls. Rhaegar closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, he dreamed not of rushing river and shattered rubies, but of a red dawn blooming behind Dragonstone's peaks. Dragonstone itself stirred. Maester Pylus received a raven from Sunspear, bore it to Lord Stannis' steward, who paced before the chamber of the painted table until candles wept wax. When Stannis emerged, skin pallid from late study, the steward bowed. A ship loaded with sellswords landed at Cape Wrath. Reports claim a Targaryen banner. Stannis froze. Viserys? Or the girl? They say Prince Rhaegar risen. Stannis' jaw flexed. He dismissed the steward, closed the door, and stared at the painted basalt table where Westeros sprawled in ochre and jade. His mind saw lines of supply, nodes of grain, the price of oaths. He had been denied the Iron Throne he deemed his by right of Robert's succession and Joffrey's illegitimacy. Now a dead prince might claim it first. He pressed fingertips to Dragonstone's depiction, little more than a fleck of red on black basalt. Fire-warmed stone met cold flesh. Then let the realm judge whose claim stands, he murmured. But justice is not sung. It is forged. He strode for the rookery. Ravens thundered skyward, scattering like cinders before wind. In the dungeons beneath the Red Keep, Tyrion Lannister strolled among damp cells, wine cup in hand, accompanied by a lantern-bearing jailer. He inspected crumbling mortar, muttering about mold and wasted taxes. When a spider-slender shadow detached from a pillar, Varys, Tyrion smirked. Good morrow, Lord Spider. Plotting webs. A humble servant merely counts flies. I hear one fly hums a dragon's tune. Varys's eyes glimmered. Rhaegar was beloved by small folk. If he lives, streets may rise. And if he dies again, streets may rise faster. Tyrion drained his cup. Then the game grows interesting. I do adore high stakes. You play with vipers, my lord. Better than playing alone. Tyrion tapped the lantern glass, flame dancing. We shall see whose torch sets fire to kindling first. Marching north, the Golden Company skirted the coast, banners furled to cloak numbers. Elephants trudged at night along shingle beaches, great pads silencing under surf, while sailors guided them by foxfire lanterns. Fisherfolk waking before dawn glimpsed monstrous silhouettes against pale sky and whispered of Kraken's grown legs. By day, Rhaegar's van flew only the plain wing skull, allowing local garrisons to mistake them for Sellsword plunderers. Where villages yielded fish and barley, coin changed hands. Where lords barred gates, Rhaegar left them unmolested. Better a realm to rule than one raised. Yet word raced swifter than ships. Bards in seedy inn sang of a prince with harp and sword marching beneath a ruby star. Each verse grew bolder. Maids swooned, small folk cheered, and tavern keepers repainted shingle signs with red dragons. At the Blackhaven crossroads, Rhaegar halted to wait on Oberyn's cavalry, only to be met by 36 knights in battered stag banners under Ser Brian Caro. They demanded passage be paid in blood. Rhaegar rode forward, visor raised. I seek no quarrel with Storm's End, he called. Withdraw, and none shall perish. Caro spat. The realm bent knee to Robert. You bend your neck, ghost. He spurred. Garland loosed a horn blast. Crossbows slotted. But Rhaegar raised a hand. He spurred too. Their chargers thundered to collision. At the last instant Rhaegar's blade flashed, a single ringing note across mail. Caro's spear shattered. His helm ripped away, plume tumbling. He pitched back, eyes wide, blood spraying. His men faltered. Rhaegar wheeled, sword red. "Who else?" he called, voice echoing like cathedral bell. No man came. The knights lowered arms and backed away. Rhaegar saluted, then rode on, leaving Caro body cradled by dust. Young Aegon, who had watched from the ridge, swallowed bile and vowed never to break when his turn came. Night after night, Rhaegar played harp by campfire. Officers gathered, then footmen, then Dornish scouts, drawn by the quiet thunder of strings. He sang of Rhaenys chasing kittens, of Elias Dawn's first light smile, of dragons atop Harrenhal's broken towers. The song wrapped the host in spell-felt calm. Fear bled out between chords. In the dark beyond firelight, a hooded figure listened. When camp slept, he padded silent to the prince's tent. Inside, Rhaegar bathed his hands in a basin, eyelids heavy. "The stone craves blood again," the hooded man whispered. Rhaegar froze. "Who speaks the creed of the faceless?" The man removed cowl. Gray eyes, skin tanned near copper, hair cropped close. "I have watched you since Bravos. The many-faced god would claim your song." Rhaegar faced him, drying hands. "Then the god must wait. I have work unfinished." "The god waits for none. Would he strike a man who may save thousands?" "The god marks only debts." The assassin stepped close, daggers unseen yet everywhere. "But debt may be delayed, if you pledge." Rhaegar met his gaze.
"I pledjar no morders."
"Only life. Then sing loud. When the song ends, I return." The man slipped away, leaving a chill. Rhaegar sank upon cot, heart pounding. Another shadow woven into fate's tapestry. He pressed fingers to ruby-hilted sword and whispered a prayer not to 7 gods, but to history itself, that his name rise clean when the quills of maesters scraped heedless of men's hearts. On an island in Blackwater Rush, the abandoned holdfast of Sau's horn rung with hammer blows as Stannis' engineers erected scorpion towers. Across the water, the Red Keep's silhouette burned crimson in sunset glare. Stannis surveyed the channel through bone-deep fatigue, Dal's weather notes fluttering. "If Rhaegar sails here, we greet him with quarrels thicker than summer flies," he muttered. Davos hovered. "Your grace, small folk starve. Siege lines choke trade. They'll starve worse under a dragon war." Davos rubbed beard. "Some claim Rhaegar is kinder than his father. They recall his music." "Music kills no traitors," Stannis snapped. He slammed gauntlet on parapet. "The realm chose Robert. We hold the line." Yet when night deepened, Stannis dozed seated at map table. In dreams he saw a red woman clothed in sunrise flame, whispering of a lord of light, a prince reborn beneath bleeding star. Her eyes shone like polished rubies, the same hue now set in a sword's pommel far to the south. He woke drenched in sweat, candles guttering. Outside, thunder rumbled without rain. In Highgarden's perfumed courts, Marjorie Tyrell read Doran's letter by moonbloom lantern. Her smile turned calculating as she folded the parchment. She brought it to her father, only to find Mace snoring amid dented armor from a day's boar hunt. Marjorie nudged his foot. "Father, Dorne offers alliance." He blinked sleep-foggy. "Dorne? Viper's bite both hands offered. Then we wear gloves of rose steel." She laid out maps. "If Rhaegar reaches the capital, both lion and stag stumble. We might crown a dragon queen of flowers." Mace's eyes widened at dreamed honors. Yet Olenna Tyrell, leaning on staff nearby, cleared her throat like a crow about to scold. "Knitting crowns for ghosts again? Better we wait until corpses pile and pick what jewels remain." Marjorie met her grandmother's gaze. "Waiting invites wolves. Strike early, and we shear them." Olenna's wrinkled lips quirked. "Ambition fits you, child. Very well. We'll send wine and smiles north, thorns hidden in stems." By the 5th week of March, Rhaegar's host camped at Rainwood's edge where black-barked oaks dripped moss like grandmother's hair. Scouts reported Robert's main army hastening from King's Landing. 20,000 foot, 8,000 mounted, bannermen of Stormlands and Crownlands alike. Behind them, Lannister columns glittered, though Tywin's golden lions marched at measured pace, waiting, perhaps, to see which way wind would blow. On a starlit eve, Rhaegar summoned Aegon, Nymeria Sand, Jon Connington, and Oberyn to his pavilion. Upon the cedar table lay the harp. He touched its strings once, single note of poised sorrow. Tomorrow we break from Rainwood. Our fleet lies hidden among the Tooth Isles, ready to sail on my signal. Connington traced a route. Blackwater Bay by dawn 2 days hence. Nymeria smirked. If wind favors and gods nap. Rhaegar nodded. Fate seldom waits on gods. But we have another task. A second letter, to be borne by Nymeria's swiftest rider, to Eddard Stark at Winterfell. Oberyn arched brow. The wolf, Lyanna's brother. Rhaegar's gaze weighted the room. He must know truth. If Ned Stark speaks for me, Northmen may hold their blades when the dragon banners rise. Connington grunted. Stark's honor is iron, but also chain. Chains bind. Better chain of honor than blade of doubt. Oberyn flourished quill. I shall pen words dipped in sand viper's honey. Rhaegar smiled faintly. Gilded or plain, let them carry our purpose. While Quill scratched, Aegon studied the map. Father, where will we meet Robert? Where he chooses, but we shall lure him to the Black Hollow. There dragons flew during the dance. Hills ring the basin. Elephants trample open plain. His charge spends itself in mud. Nymeria blew a low whistle. You gamble again. War is chance harnessed, Rhaegar said. I would rather orchestrate chance than serve it. The march resumed at dawn, mist shredding before spear points. Rhaegar's column bent west, following goat tracks through lower Rainwood to jagged bluffs known as the Mermaid's Stair. Below, hidden coves harbored galleys with sails furled tight as secrets. Shore parties scrambled to load elephants onto barges while masts creaked. A gale howled offshore, but Strickland deemed it blessing. Clouds to hide high banners from Stannis' watchtowers. As the first galley slipped seaward, Rhaegar stood at prow, cloak beating like crimson sail, eyes fixed on distant lights of King's Landing. Each league traveled felt like a page turned toward destiny's climax. In the city, small folk thronged Flea Bottom, trading rumors for coin. Silver Prince returned, Robert's men mustering, lions hoarding bread. At night, walls echoed with war drums as Sel's-words burned incense to foreign gods. Within Maegor's holdfast, Cersei stalked the maiden vault, knuckles white around goblet. She confronted Jaime, freshly recalled from Riverrun. Our father crawls slow as a slug while dragons wing across sea. Will you stand idle? Jaime removed helm, gold hair clinging with sweat. I stand where duty calls. And if duty calls you to carve your king's heart from his chest, as your vows once demanded, he met her gaze, pain flickering. Then I pray the king's heart listens first. She hurled wine against tapestry. You and your prayers. Yet even as wine dripped red, Jaime pictured the prince he had once admired riding through the tourney gate, harp strumming Rhaegar's tragic melodies. A dream of beauty stained by duty's poison. If that prince lived still, perhaps honor could be salvaged. Perhaps, on the eve before Blackwater Bay, Rhaegar convened a final council aboard the war galley Sea Fury. Lanterns swayed, casting brass glare over maps. Officers crowded the cabin, breath tasting of nerves. Strickland pointed sliders showing two tides. We'll ride the flood at second bell. Wind easterly. Scorpions may rake us from the city walls. I know those walls, Connington said. Gap your formation. Let the galleys roll with tide, not fight it. Their scorpions track poorly against craft that yaw in current. Oberyn twirled a dagger between knuckles. My cousin and I sail with Vanguard. We take the harbor chain winch house and raise portcullis. Aegon spoke up. I wish to land with first wave. Rhaegar's brows knit. You are heir. Your death would shatter everything. Then let me ride second. The boy's jaw trembled. "I will not cower." Silence. Rhaegar looked to Oberyn, who inclined his head. Let the cub test his claws. At last, Rhaegar nodded. "You come behind my own company. You hold the pier. If Robert rides, you fall back to Griffin's Gate." Aegon swallowed, nodded. The council dispersed. Rhaegar climbed to deck where moonlight silvered gentle chop. Clouds galloped overhead like pale horses. He strummed his harp softly, a lover's lament. Footsteps approached. Nymeria sand, cloak whipping. "Cannot sleep," she murmured. "Nor can dreams," he replied, fingers dancing. She listened, and his song curled around them like warm smoke. When the final note sighed, she asked, "Do you fear tomorrow?" "I fear what must be lost to win." Loss shapes victory's vessel. She placed a flask of Dornish red beside him. "Drink. Sleep may come." He thanked her, watched her descend hatch, then raised flask in moon's pale gaze. "To Elia," he whispered. "To Lyanna, to every child torn by crowns." He drank. Wine tasted of dusk and blood-orange blossoms. He closed eyes, letting surf lull him. In that hush, he dreamed of the trident again. But the river ran backward, regathering rubies, mending plates, until the prince rose whole, crimson streaming up into gem-bright coronet. He mounted a pale horse of fire and galloped across golden fields where wheat sang of peace. He woke at first bell, heartbeat calm as still water. Horn blasts echoed along the fleet, time. Sails unfurled. Wind billowed. 34 galleys swept into Blackwater Bay beneath shroud of low fog. Sea fury led, prow carving water like quiet blade. High upon the mast, lookout signaled. Chain winch tower unlit. Stannis had withdrawn his fleet toward Dragonstone, leaving harbor guarded but not sealed. Rowers strained, oars biting foam. As galleys rounded Massey's hook, the red keep loomed on Aegon's sightline, crimson and black soaring above city roofs. A tremor shivered down his spine. Home he'd never seen. Scorpions barked from walls. Corals hissed overhead, clattering off deck rails. Strickland's archers returned fire, shafts arcing to ramparts. One coral slammed mast spar. Splinters rained. Elephants trumpeted below deck, chains clanking. Sea fury made the quay first. Oberyn's men leapt to cobbles, storming the chain house. Screams echoed. Moments later, the great harbor chain clanged as its winch reversed, iron links sinking beneath murk. Galleys surged forward in flood's embrace. Rhaegar leapt ashore, sword blazing. Golden Company pikes fanned, shields locking. Dockside guards scattered, unprepared for elephant thunder as barges grounded. One elephant crashed through a fish haul wall, sending herring barrels skyward like silver hail. Citizens woke to chaos. War horns, shrieks, the ground's heavy tremor. Some cheered, "The dragon! Prince Rhaegar!" Others fled, clutching babes. At Griffin's Gate, city watchmen rallied, but Connington's company seized the guardhouse before horns called muster. Portcullis groaned up. Columns of spearmen poured into street of flower. A rain of flower petals. A baker's toppled sack whirled on their boots. Rhaegar advanced at center, Oberyn at right, Garland left, Aegon close behind, flanked by Nymeria and Connington. Above, bells tolled frantic discord. Smoke curled from burning granaries where stray lanterns had tumbled. Yet no wildfire, not yet. At the fish market, a swirl of gold cloaks barred path. Ser Jalabar Ho rallying city watch. He raised halberd. "In the king's name." "Which king?" A voice roared behind. Bronn the Cell's word. Grinning, he threw dagger that thunked into Ho's pauldron. Confusion rippled. Some gold cloaks remembered Rhaegar's charity on old tourney days, others Robert's spilled coin, but none their commander, Janos Slint, who cowered near Maegor's gate. Rhaegar stepped forward, helm bared, silver gold hair spilling. "I claim no lesser crown than my own birthright. Stand aside, and you may keep your honor." Dozens dropped weapons. More joined. Ho fled. A cheer rose. Ragged, "Dragon! Dragon for king!" Through that breach the host surged toward Street of Steel. Twin towers loomed ahead. the Dragon Gate, and, beyond, the Red Keep's walls where Lannister crimson fluttered. Cunnington's scouts reported, Robert's van one day out, riding hard under storm banners. Lannister foot 3 days behind. Time's hourglass spilled fast. Rhaegar halted at the Great September of Baelor's Marble Plaza. Its domed spires gleamed under new sun. He turned to Garland. Hold the city. I ride for Robert. Aegon protested. Father, you hold the September. Be the dragon they see if I fall.
Rhaegar clasped son helm, kissed brow.
Then, mounting a dappled courser, he galloped south through Mud Gate, Oberyn and 50 Dornish light horse at his heels, to meet destiny upon the King's Road. Aegon watched till dust swallowed them. He sheathed sword, turned to the Sept's vast doors. Small folk had begun to gather, eyes full of hope and fear. He took a breath, stepped onto marble steps, and spoke. I am Aegon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar, born of Elia Martell. I come not to burn, but to heal. His voice rang across plaza. Sobs rose. Some bent knees, others cast flowers. Gold cloaks knelt. Within the sept, candles were lit for the first dragon prayers since Maegor's reign. Above, the morning sun broke clouds, casting a spear of light upon the red-hilted sword Rhaegar had gifted his son. It blazed like dawn set to steel. Beyond the walls, hoofbeats thundered, 2 storms rushing to collide where gods alone could see outcome. Rubies waited to fall anew, perhaps into mud, perhaps into memory's crown. And inside the Red Keep's highest tower, Queen Cersei stood at a lattice window, her children cowering behind. She saw dragon banners rippling in lower city smoke and tasted bile. Send for wildfire, she whispered, voice ice. If the realm will not be mine, let it be no one's. The fleet's oardrums fell silent at last light of the second day, when wind slanted westward and the salt smell of the Blackwater gave way to the loamy musk of river mud. Prince Rhaegar guided his courser along the causeway that threaded through marsh and thorn from the Mud Gate, Oberyn's light cavalry fanning out on both flanks with scouts at every ford. The land here rose in faint ripples, low, rain-slick ridges veined by runnels of brackish water, and ahead the King's Road wound north in a pale ribbon hugged by dense copses of oak. A hush clung to every leaf, as though the countryside held its breath for what must walk it before dawn. Rhaegar called a halt at an abandoned toll house half-collapsed beside the road, its shuttered windows drooling nettle vines. The courtyard beyond spread in a ragged triangle bisected by a dry cattle trough, just wide enough to fit 300 horse. By torch glare his quartermasters pulled down mossy boards, righted broken fences, and hammered spikes for elephant pickets. No horn sounded, no drum beat. The whole camp settled into a conspirator's whisper, each man willing his armor not to clink. Just past midnight, when crickets sang riot loud and fog pooled knee-deep among the tents, a lone rider arrived from the northern verge. A boy scarcely 17, face ghastly pale beneath a barbrow's helm. He slid from the saddle, rushed headlong to the command pavilion, and spluttered news past trembling Lee. P.S. Robert Baratheon's van had pitched camp at Cackle Hill, 4 leagues north-northwest, with 15,000 infantry plodding behind. Rhaegar thanked him, pressed a dragon scale coin into his palm, and turned to Oberyn. Robert comes fast. Too fast, the Viper mused. Either fear whips his spurs or the bottle has not loosened his grip tonight. He toyed with his spear's ash haft, eyes glinting. Let him charge blind at dawn. Our elephants will shatter his line like a glass snake under hoof. Perhaps, Rhaegar said, though his gaze drifted east, toward the barely visible cradle of Black Hollow where the low ridges dipped into a broad, bowl-shaped valley. Moonlight frosted the meadow grasses, and in the hush he imagined he could feel the earth's slow heartbeat beneath his boots. He motioned for parchment, quill, and a silver-tipped stylus. Within minutes he drafted 3 riders' orders. 1 note to Sir John Cunnington inside the city, commanding he hold Griffin's Gate and the Street of Steel, yet refrain from pressing the Red Keep until bells signal Dragonfire or doom. 1 to young Aegon, hold the sept, shutter the wild rumor, and be seen praying with the small folk. Their faith may yet become our shield. and the third he addressed to Lord Stannis Baratheon at Dragonstone, in words as brittle as crystal. Falsehood breeds only ash. When truth stands in flesh upon your shores, remember your vow to law. Summon your sense of justice and stand for rightful succession. He sealed each letter with a blob of black wax stamped by the crowned harp signet, handed them to swift couriers, and dismissed thought of ravens. The night sky already belonged to fluttering spies. Before returning to his own tent, he lingered at the elephant lines. The beasts, 23 in all. That odd number still bothered his love of symmetry. Shifted thunderously in their chains, trunks twining, tusks tipped with bronze shapes dull as moonstone. One young bull, broad-backed but scarred along the ear from some Sarnori lion, stretched its trunk toward him. Rhaegar pressed his palm to the leathery tip, felt warm breath like a forge bellows. In the gloom, its dark eyes blinked, ancient and sorrowful. "Be gentle tomorrow," he whispered, though he knew elephants knew no gentle in the press of spears. He slept barely 3 hours, half dreaming of harp strings tugged taut as bowstrings, before a sentry's hiss roused the whole camp. Distant horn calls, faint but unmistakable, floating across marsh mist from Cackle Hill. The first herald of dawn splashed rose-gray across the eastern rim, and the fog in the low ground brightened like quicksilver. Armor was buckled, horses watered, bread and salt jerked down, and by the time the sky bled to peach, the Golden Company's core battalions had formed 3 staggered wedges behind a thin skirmish screen of Dornish horse archers. Rhaegar took the center, 500 Sellsword knights under black and gold, flanked on left by Garland's heavy spears and on right by Oberyn's rangy mounted vanguard, each man's shield bearing the red sun and spear of Dorne. Behind, pachyderm trumpets brayed dull thunder, and rose banners wafted the stench of dung across the chill air. They advanced at a calm walk to the crest of a low drumlin overlooking the broad, damp floor of Black Hollow. Below, morning light revealed peat-dark marsh edging a swath of sedge and thistle, already trodden to mud by Robert's scouts. Across that shallow basin, the royal host had drawn up in roaring colors. Crowned stag of Baratheon blazing gold on a sea of black, forked by a scattering of Storm Lord's sigils. Penrose, Selmy, Swan, and, unsettlingly bright, a dense block of crimson and gold where Jaime Lannister marshaled 4,000 men of the Rock. Robert himself sat a great warhorse armored flank to flank in gilded steel, antlers rising from a helm that looked half trophy, half threat. Even at this distance, the man's breadth astounded, shoulders like gate hinges, chest swaddled in sable and mail, but Rhaegar marked deep shadows beneath his eyes and a wine-bloated flush across nose and cheek. It had been 17 years since their last meeting under banners. Time had hewn them into different statues entirely. A hush fell when Robert nudged his charger ahead, flanked by Ser Boros Blunt and Lord Renly bearing a standard. He halted midway down the slope, raising gauntlet in challenge. His hammer hung heavy-breasted at hip, its steel face etched with lightning bolts. Oberyn hissed, "Parley or bravado?" "Parley," Rhaegar said. He signaled. Standard-bearer planted the 3-headed dragon on the ridge. Rhaegar spurred forward alone, cloak snapping, sword sheathed, helmet unfastened. The hollow rang with drum-quiet anticipation, both armies deathly still save for the tick of gear and the occasional stamp of horse. They met at exactly the bowl's center, a trampled patch of bog whose water reflected a single fat cloud overhead. Robert wrenched pivot to face him. The warhorse snorted steam. For a breath they stared, amethyst eyes against storm gray. Wind tugged silver-blonde locks across Rhaegar's cheek. Robert's beard bristled like a gorse bush. "So it's true," Robert said at last, voice a low grind, spit thick with disbelief and wine. "River didn't keep you after all." "Nor you, your honor," Rhaegar replied soft. He saw the flicker, a wounded flash. "I did not steal Lyanna. She ran with me, Robert, by her own wild heart." Robert's jaw clenched. "Tell that to her bones, dragon." "I would," Rhaegar whispered, "if you'd not buried them beneath lies." Roaring breath. Robert shook his helm antlers like a bull tosses horns. "You stand there draped in Sellsword rags, spouting love tales, while you march Sellsword steel on my city. Call back your rabble and kneel. I march justice, not rabble, and I kneel to no usurper." Robert's eyes hardened to iron. "So be it." He jerked his reins, pivoted, and thundered back uphill without another word. Rhaegar wheeled likewise. Parley had lasted scant 40 heartbeats. Each beat felt an age. When he regained his line, Oberyn shot him a serpent's grin. "You did not mention Lyanna would share the field." "It mattered," Rhaegar said. "Now he fights not for realm or crown, but for a lie he cannot bear exposed. It will cloud him. And clouded men die," Oberyn finished, spear twirling. On the opposing hill, Robert's standard dipped twice. A great horn bellowed. Infantry parted as his vanguard of 6,000 heavy horse formed up. Cedar Stormlanders on left, Estermont and Nerbosk in center, and Jaime Lannister's red tide on right. Steel glittered like a new-forged sea when their standard bearers passed. Rhaegar raised his own arm. Golden Company trumpets sounded a clear, high note. Elephant mahouts urged their mounts forward, each beast lumbering to the fore, tusks swaying in dreadful ballet. Archers knocked whistling shafts tipped with Myrish fire oil. Crossbowmen ratcheted windlasses. Rain-laden clouds swept overhead, dimming the sun. Between armies, marsh mist thickened again, curling waist-high. A hush swallowed sound. Then Robert's horn shrieked a second time, and the stag host roared down the slope like thunder incarnate. The first shock of horse against marsh sounded dull, an immense muffled splash, and the forward ranks slowed as their mounts found boggy footing. But momentum carried them through slop, and soon they gained the firmer sedge flats. Lannister knights lowered lances, crimson pennants cracking, while the Baratheon center thundered shoulder to shoulder with black shields overlapping like a tidal wave of iron. Rhaegar drew his blade. The ruby in its pommel flared as if lit from within. He pointed it forward. Elephants charged. 23 leather. Plated towers hammered into quaking ground. Trunks trumpeting war cries the likes of which King's Landing had not heard since Volantene war mammoths centuries past. In the howdahs atop those living fortresses crouched 5 archers each, loosing fire oil arrows that arced and hissed through gloom. The first volley struck Robert's center as it reached Midbog. Flame blossomed along shields, licking surcoats. Horses shrieked, rearing. Yet Robert's hammer had not slowed. Through smoke he galloped full tilt, bearing left to skirt the worst mud. Jaime's Lannisters mirrored him on their wing, angling clear of elephant charges to fold around the flank. In Rhaegar's throat a frisson rose, admiration, dread, something twin to fate. He spurred downhill to meet the swirl. Their lines collided like mountains thrown. Steel rang, bones snapped, horses crashed screaming into knee-deep sludge. An elephant plowed through a knot of Estermont men, flinging bodies. But 5 Lannister knights darted beneath its belly and hamstrung the giant, and its thunderous collapse shook the trough water 50 yards away. Rhaegar's personal guard carved a crimson wedge, cutting for Robert. He glimpsed the king's antlers bobbing ahead, smashing a Sellsword from saddle. Their paths converged like drawn magnets. For a moment there was nothing but the clash of blade on shield, the hot sting of blood spray, the stink of churned peat. Then a sudden gap yawned. Robert's warhammer swung at his head. Rhaegar parried with the flat of his blade, sparks showering. The shock numbed wrist to elbow. He ducked another sweep, slashed for Robert's thigh, but the king's plate turned it. Horse bodies jostled. A fallen steed squealed underfoot. Rhaegar drew rein, pivoted, and hammered a boot into Robert's stirrup guard, unbalancing him. Robert roared savage delight. They circled, breath clouds mingling. Rhaegar's courser skittered sideways, hooves sloshing. Robert's mount stamped, foam flecking nostrils. A sudden trumpet blare from south cut across the melee. Oberyn's reserves charging in long crescent formation. From the city's distant wall tops, bells told the storm. Robert attacked again, hammer overhead. Rhaegar feinted left, slid under the descending arc, and raked his blade across Robert's forearm seam. Blood spurted bright. The hammer faltered. Robert snarled, pain-distracted. Rhaegar pressed, raining precise cuts that pinged off cuirass edges until one landed in the king's unarmored armpit. A groan burst from Robert, half agony, half rage. He batted Rhaegar's blade aside with a sweeping parry that bracketed Rhaegar's ribs, denting mail. Another time and it might cave bone, but Rhaegar's horse danced back. Out of the mud thundered Jaime Lannister's vanguard, red cloaks streaming. Their charge struck Rhaegar's flank, toppling Sells-wards. An elephant spun, shrieked as a Lannister scorpion bolt slammed through its skull. The beast convulsed, collapsing across two Baratheon pikemen. Rhaegar wheeled east to escape the red tide. Jaime spurred after, lance tucked. In that instant, Rhaegar saw the Kingslayer's face, the conflicted set of mouth, the pleading question in eyes. Why are we here, you and I, again on opposite sides of honor? The lance came anyway. Rhaegar twisted, parried the lance's steel tip up in a shower of sparks, then slammed pommel into Jaime's helm so hard the visor crumpled like tin. The lance flew free. Jaime reeled, blood streaming from brow. Oberyn's spear-tip cavalry crashed into the Lannister flank, Dornish spears pricking at horse bellies. Jaime's men fought back viciously, but the initial shock broke their arrow-shaped line and scattered crimson pennons across marsh. In the midst of chaos, Robert returned, hammer once more raised high, mouth twisted with drink, hurt, fury. He spurred directly for Rhaegar, trampling a fallen pikeman. Rhaegar glimpsed antlers looming, felt a weird calm, the same stillness he knew in Song's silent last resonance. Their weapons met mid-arc, hammer to sword, a deafening clang. Rhaegar's blade vibrated near to shattering. Robert's hammer jarred from his grip and fell, half buried in muck. Both horses reared. Rhaegar vaulted from saddle, feet landing uncertain on slick turf. Robert lumbered down almost as fast, great bulk quaking. They closed, no steel now, only fists and gauntlet claws. Robert swung wild. Rhaegar slipped the punch, drove elbow into the king's burnt red armpit wound. Robert staggered, bellowing. Rhaegar kneed him in belly. Robert caught the leg, hurled him backward. They rolled through stinking water, grappling like ancient titans while their armies hacked and screamed around them. Atop the ridge, a Golden Company trumpeter saw his prince vanish beneath Robert's weight and blew a frantic rally. But in the city, John Connington read different signs. Wildfire barrels rolling from the Red Keep's Sally Gate, shrugged by green-robed pyromancers under Queen Cersei's watchful eye. Connington cursed, ordered 500 men down Serpent's Walk with shields to intercept. Arrows whistled. Wildfire pots shattered. Green fire whooshed skyward, licking crenellations. The smell of charred flesh wafted along alleys, and small folk wailed. Inside Baelor's September, Aegon heard the screams. He knelt before the High Septon, forced to rise when smoke filtered through rose windows. "Open the doors," he ordered, voice cracking. "Let the people inside. Here they are safe." Pilgrims poured in, half-singed, clutching babes. Torch soot smeared marble pillars. The air shook with frightened prayer. Back in the hollow, Jaime, helmet half-caved, rallied 24 knights around a battered Baratheon banner and plunged for Robert, hacking path through gold and Sunday. He saw the king grappling Rhaegar, saw Rhaegar slip in mud, saw Robert's mailed fist crack across the prince's jaw, blood spraying. But before Jaime closed, a shadow loomed. Oberyn on horseback, spear leveled. Jaime's eyes widened. He dragged rein, ducked. Oberyn's spear lanced past to strike another Lannister square in chest, toppling him. Jaime and Oberyn clashed. Sword to spear, horse to horse, both cursing in old tongues. Their duel spiraled away, red and sand banners twining. Rhaegar clawed mud, rolled from Robert's attempted knee drop, and surged to feet. Robert groped for hammer but found only slick sedge. Rhaegar snatched his blade from muck. With a shout, for Elia, for the songs, he drove point through Robert's breastplate seam at collarbone. Steel ground bone. The king's roar exploded across valley. Rhaegar withdrew and stabbed again, lower. Robert's gauntlet smashed down, glancing off Rhaegar's helm, stunning. but the dragon prince held grip and plunged a third time. The stag king stumbled back, blood sluicing down Gorget. For a heartbeat he stared in disbelief. Rage, despair, and some deep relief warring. Then knees buckled. He collapsed onto side, plate clanging like temple gong. Mud sucked at him, and breath came in wet, choking rasps. The valley seemed to hush, as if even war paused. Nearby knights gasped. Some fled, others fought harder in panic. A Baratheon captain shouted to rally, but Lannister horns keened retreat. Elephants trumpeted triumph. The stag had fallen. Rhaegar knelt beside the king he once called friend. Robert tried to speak. Blood bubbled. At last words came, ragged. "Lyanna, you took her." "I loved her," Rhaegar replied, voice breaking. "She died alone because we both broke our vows." Robert coughed crimson. "And my realm for nothing. Not nothing. Your reign kept winter at bay. But now rest." Rhaegar pressed a cloth to the wound, feudal yet gentle. Robert's eyes glazed, roaming sky. Cold, damn cold. A final breath rattled out. The great chest stilled. The last of House Baratheon's thunder died there in the mire, under clouds heavy with unshed rain. Across the field, horns began to quaver. Yield calls, white harbor trumpets of Stark banners that had marched under Robert now raised gray wolves signaling truce. Jaime disengaged from Oberyn, retreating with 4 remaining knights, face ashen. Oberyn's spear dripped blood, but he merely watched, breathing hard. Rhaegar rose, crimson-painted, sword limp. He scanned tumult. Sellswords cheering, Stormlanders dropping weapons, Dornish spears chanting. Yet far to North Crest he spotted banners still resolute. A golden lion on crimson, serried ranks pivoting in disciplined withdrawal. Tywin Lannister had arrived, a stern rear guard covering retreat. Rhaegar wiped gore from eyes. "Halt pursuit," he commanded Strickland, who galloped up. "We've bled enough. Gather wounded. Treat their king with honor." Strickland's brows arched. Mercy amidst victory? But he nodded. Oberyn trotted near. "Your road's clear to the capital. One thrust, and the Iron Throne is yours." "Not mine," Rhaegar murmured, gaze drifting south where the city's black walls shimmered under rising smoke. "I must calm wildfire first, and break the last chain of lies." It took 2 hours to stabilize the hollow, collect prisoners, burn fallen horses, and lash Robert's body to a bare-toned litter borne by knights who once called him lord. A stiff west wind rolled scent of blood and trampled sedge toward the walls, where watchers lined parapets. News passed from lip to lip faster than wildfire. The dragon had slain the stag. Rhaegar did not ride in triumph. Caked with mud and fatigue, he led a small company and the king's body to Mud Gate, banners furled to half-mast in silent respect. The gatehouse captain, one of Connington's men, opened at once. Inside, the street of Flower lay scorched, but the fires near the Red Keep had been quenched. When word of Robert's death reached Queen and court, a thick hush spread, punctuated by screams and wails, but no fresh wildfire orders came. Cersei had retreated into Maegor's holdfast. Past the shattered fish market, Rhaegar found Aegon outside the sept, clad in soot-stained brigandine, distributing bread to refugees. Father and son embraced, tears mingling with dust. "I feared," Aegon whispered. "I returned," Rhaegar answered, voice hoarse. "We have much to do." In the throne room, however, everything hung by a spider's thread. Tywin Lannister's vanguard marched through the Gate of the Gods at dusk. Banners rolled but swords drawn, and Jaime had stolen inside earlier. The Red Keep stood in Lannister hands. Yet when Rhaegar and Oberyn approached the Barbican with a flag of truce and Robert's body borne behind, trumpets did not challenge. Instead, Ser Adam Marbrand met them, helm under arm. He bowed. "My lord hand bids you enter in peace. No blades within throne hall." Rhaegar inclined his head. He surrendered sword, ruby pommel gleaming dull in torchlight, to Connington's keeping, removed dagger, even unlaced gauntlets. Oberyn scowled but surrendered spear, muttering that vipers kept fangs wherever flesh touched earth. They crossed torchlit corridors, their footsteps echoing off vaults hung with banners of dragon, lion, and stag. In the king's solar sat Lord Tywin in full regalia, golden plate unmarred, hands folded. Beside him Jaime stood in white cloak, savaged helm replaced by fresh. At Tywin's left hovered Varys, half-smile inscrutable. Tywin's green-gold gaze swept Rhaegar up and down. "Your Grace," he said, quiet, deliberate. "The realm has waited long for rightful order." Rhaegar felt the weight. "Then let order be restored with as little blood as possible." "Agreed. I have commanded my men to sheathe arms." Cersei remains under guard until succession decided. The throne, torn between stag and lion, may accept dragon. Oberyn chuckled darkly. "Your courtesy glitters like a coin just struck, Lord Tywin. What price stamped upon it?" Tywin ignored the barb. "My grandchildren, Joffrey, Myrcella, Tommen, are Baratheons in name. Spare them scandal. Wed Joffrey's claim to your line through Princess Rhaenys. He will kneel, you will pardon, and the realm continues without upheaval." Rhaegar's heart clenched. Child marriage, bastard legitimacy, queen regent games. Yet even victory did not free a king from such webs. He answered carefully, "The realm aches from storms. Peace is worth sacrifice. Yet truth must rule, not lies. Joffrey's father is widely whispered otherwise. Let that be judged by council." Tywin's jaw ticked. "A council I will attend." "As will I," came new voice. Stannis Baratheon entering, cloak damp from river spray, Davos behind. "The Iron Throne falls vacant. Robert named me heir in his decree." Rhaegar turned. "Robert himself once crowned me his bane. You value law, Lord Stannis. Will you deny the elder claim?" Stannis's mouth twisted. "You died. I lived." Rhaegar stepped forward. "By law, even a breath sustains blood right." Stannis's eyes dropped to Robert's shrouded corpse carried by squires. He swallowed. "I will hear the council." So it was that in the Tower of the Hand that night a provisional conclave formed. Tywin, Stannis, Rhaegar, Oberyn, Cunnington, Varys, Maester Pycelle, and, by Rhaegar's insistence, the High Septon. They spoke until candles guttered and dawn rhymed the windows crimson. At first light, the Iron Throne Hall opened to assembled lords and small folk throng alike. On steps below the great blades, the High Septon pronounced a roll of charges and lineage. He spoke of Mad King Aerys' crimes, Robert's rebellion, and the living proof of dragon blood. He spoke of Lyanna's rumored will, of Elia's children surviving in secret, and of oaths man forged then broken by fire. When his voice faded, Rhaegar stepped forward, bareheaded, no crown. He lifted neither sword nor banner, only his broken harp. Fingers touched strings, and a single note rang soft, plaintive, impossibly clear under those vaulted rafters. He sang. No accompaniment, no chorus, just a lone voice painting memories. Summer halls doomed blaze and the births amidst ash, children laughing in water gardens, tourney roses laid before a wolf maid, songs suffocated beneath iron helms. His voice trembled on the name Lyanna, cracked on Elia, and steadied like sunrise when it rose to the promise of a realm united beneath mercy, not fear. When silence fell, many wept, knights of crownlands, fisherwomen, even grim Stannis blinking more than torch smoke required. Tywin's face remained marble, but Varys dabbed tears with silk square. The High Septon addressed the hall. "Does any contest this claim?" From the back a voice cried, "Justice!" But no lord stepped forth. Even Jaime remained still, white cloak as rigid as conscience. Then Stannis strode to Rhaegar. He drew Lightbringer, no, only his plain steel sword, and knelt, presenting blade hilt first. "I am man of law. Law names you firstborn of Mad King, alive and thus rightful. I, Stannis of House Baratheon, yield claim." A gasp rippled. Rhaegar accepted the sword, raised Stannis. They clasped wrists as warriors. Tywin followed, slow, each step scraping chain. He knelt, though his eyes burned cold bargain. One by one others bent knees. Edric Storm, Lord Valerion, the Evenstar, the lords of Bay and Wood. Finally Jaime knelt, golden head bowed. Cersei never appeared. Locked within Maegor's holdfast, she learned later that her father had bartered her children's survival for peace, and perhaps, she thought, her own sons would thank him when older. That noon, under smoky skies still tinged green where wildfire had licked stone, Rhaegar Targaryen was crowned with a simple circlet of pale steel before the Iron Throne. He did not sit it yet. Instead, he placed the crown upon Aegon's brow beside him. "I have led armies," he proclaimed, voice echoing in hush. "But my wounds mark me a steward of dawn, not noon. Aegon, sixth of his name, shall reign. I will serve as regent until his majority and seek counsel of realm's finest. Of stag and rose and sun alike." The hall erupted. Some cheers, some shocked murmurs, some muffled dissent. But the deed was done. A dragon prince set the crown on a dragon's son, and the spiral of war arced toward uneasy peace. That evening, when the torches flickered low and carpenters nailed new shutters over wildfire-scarred windows, Rhaegar climbed the Tower of the Hand alone, harp slung. He stepped onto the rampart that overlooked the Blackwater, where twilight painted the river a bruised purple. Footsteps tapped behind Oberyn. He leaned on parapet, gaze tracing barges hauling the last elephant corpses downstream. So many dead, and still the song plays faint. Rhaegar plucked a minor chord. "Songs never end, cousin." They paused for breath. Oberyn's smile was bittersweet. "When the stags came, I vowed vengeance. I still crave redress for Elia." "You shall have justice," Rhaegar said. "Not in blind blood, but in truth told. We will judge Gregor Clegane, Amory Lorch, and all who butchered innocents. But let their guilt be weighed by law, not spear." Oberyn considered, nodding slowly. "Very well, but I keep my spear honed. Spears remind kings of promises." Rhaegar's fingers brushed strings, producing a hopeful trill. Below, streets began to hum, not with fear but with tentative celebration. Bakers lit hearths anew. Sept bells told a steady, hopeful cadence instead of alarm. Children ran with paper dragons glazing dye across dusk breeze. Somewhere, someone sang a half-remembered ballad of the Silver Prince who played sad songs beneath weirwoods. Rhaegar closed his eyes, letting cool air wash the gore stink from memory. He thought of Lyanna's blue winter roses scattering on the wind, of Elia's gentle hand guiding a baby's first step, of Robert's final bewildered breath, of the throne itself standing empty behind. His war was done, but winter still loomed beyond wall, and dragons yet unhatched in distant seas stirred within dreaming eggs. He would need to rule with more than harp strings. Yet for this moment, he allowed himself a single soft chord that lingered above river tide, neither mournful nor triumphant, only inexorably alive. The note faded, and in that hush Rhaegar Targaryen, once thought drowned beneath rubies, felt, for the first time since the trident truly returned.